So Charlie Munger gave this talk in 90s, probably in Harvard Law School, and this is a very famous talk. And this video is about uh, that particular. It is based on that talk basically. So Charlie shared 24 tendencies which are present in human beings which affect our judgment. So there are tendencies which are operating in us and affecting our judgment. And these tendencies are mostly operating at subconscious level. So we are not aware of them when they are operating. And many times they make us choose incorrectly. Many times they make us choose something which is not in our best interest. So Charlie shared 24 such tendencies, and we will go through them in detail one by one. So there are 24 tendencies, and after that, he calls a particular effect as Lollapalooza. So Lollapalooza is not really a tendency; it is more like a extreme effect when many of these tendencies they combine in the same direction at the same time. So Charlie says that we should give special attention to Lollapalooza possibility because it could provide big opportunity or it could create a big negative effect on our life. So the question is, why should we try to understand these tendencies? What's the benefit, right? The first is to make better decisions in life. The second is to avoid costly mistakes. And third is to protect ourselves from being manipulated by others because other people can trigger these tendencies in us and manipulate us into doing something which otherwise we would not do. So before we go through the tendencies in detail, let us understand that these tendencies they got formed as part of our evolution as human being, and they have been beneficial in our evolution, otherwise they would not have been there. And even now also they are beneficial many times, or probably most of the time. So important thing is when you go through these tendencies, don't judge yourself if you find them. Don't think them as weakness in you. We all have them. But we need to be aware of them and careful of them when we are making important consequential decision or choices in life which have long-term consequences. So with that, let's start. So the first tendency is reward and punishment super response tendency. So incentives are superpower, and there are two types of incentives. The first is to receive the reward, and second is to avoid punishment. Right? So incentives are basically what motivates us, and what motivates us is to receive the reward or to avoid punishment. So the first implication is if we want to change the behavior of someone, or for that matter ourselves also, we should first remove any bad incentive which is present and supporting the bad behavior. And then we should use reward to um, support the new behavior. And prompt reward works the best, And also we should have some form of punishment for not complying with the new behavior. So point being, correcting and aligning incentive is the first step in solving any problem related to people or organization. And when we are dealing with service providers, someone who is providing some kind of service to us, for example, advisor or agent or a broker or a consultant, then we should be aware of what is their incentive, how do they make money, and we should assess whether their incentive is aligned with the welfare of ourselves. And finally, we should make provision for their biasness in making decision, because they would be affected by their incentive. So the next step is psychological denial, which most of us know. So denial is where reality is too painful, so we tend to distort it so that we can accept it and cope it better in life. And it happens mostly in the case of love and in case of death of some loved ones, and also in case of addiction. So whenever you meet someone who is addicted to alcohol or drugs and all, you will find that they are almost always in denial. No one accepts that I am an addict. So the third one is excessive self-regard. So excessive self-regard is this feeling that I am special, you know, and we love ourselves, we love our conclusions and beliefs, and we mostly misappraise ourselves on higher side. We overestimate ourselves. We misappraise our possession. Whatever I have is special. You know, like my children, my spouse, my car, my house. And it also results into endowment effect. So once we own something, it suddenly becomes more special, more valuable. And also we tend to prefer people like ourselves who have the same beliefs and opinions. So because of this excessive self-regard, where we overestimate ourselves and what we believe, what happens is we make these kind of mistakes. You know, we foolishly bet where we don't have required skill, or we bet against people who have higher skill than us because we are overconfident. I am special, I know it. And one example of that is bad hiring decision. You know, someone with 20 years of experience is sitting in front of you, you are taking his or her interview, and you think within 1 hour you will be able to assess that person correctly. Whereas the better approach would be to give more weightage to the track record of the past performance. So our excessive self-regard, our overconfidence in ourselves can make us believe that we can assess and judge a person better than what the track record or the past record of the person is reflecting. Another negative effect is we feel entitled. We live our life feeling entitled, and we justify and rationalize our poor behavior with excuses. we make excuse for our fixable poor performance, poor behavior. We give reasons like life has been unfair to me. I was under pressure, and therefore what I did was okay, acceptable and forgivable. So something which we can correct in ourselves, we don't correct. But we should realize that fixable but not fixed bad behavior is actually bad character, and it tends to create more of it, and it causes more damage in future. So next one, over optimism. So over optimism is actually opposite tendency of denial. So in denial, what happens is the reality is painful. We are not able to accept it as it is. So we basically become hopeful and optimistic that reality is not so, to cope better with life. But even when there is no pain, there is no need for denial, then also in general, we tend to be over optimistic in life. And because we are over optimistic, we take higher risk. Why? Because we are not assessing the odds correctly. So this happens when we start, let's say, a new business. Anyone who is starting a new business will be very, very optimistic, almost like a over optimistic. Or when we start trading in stock market, then also we will ignore the statistics that 95% people are losing money in trading. Next one is consistency and commitment, and this is a very powerful tendency. So there is this tendency, consistency and commitment, which is we want to remain consistent with our prior conclusions, our prior choices, our loyalties, our reputational identity, and our accepted role in society. You could be teacher or preacher or whatever role we have, we tend to remain consistent with that. So you would notice that people don't change their mind. Not changing their mind means they continue to believe what they believe, right? They don't change their conclusions, and this is especially true when the conclusions are won through a lot of struggle, you know and if you are concluding something, that too you have learned certain lesson in a very hard way, and if you are publicly expressing it also to people, then it becomes even harder to change. So you would remain more strongly consistent with those kind of conclusions. So normal human condition is such that we keep our old conclusions intact despite disconfirming evidence. We quickly ignore disconfirming evidence, and we promptly avoid cognitive dissonance. Means you believe something and there is a evidence which is contrary to that. So it creates a dissonance. So our mind works in such a way that we quickly forget disconfirming evidence, and we keep the conclusion intact and new ideas will not be accepted. Keeping an open mind is not easy, it's very hard. Next tendency is reciprocation. So we have this tendency to reciprocate, and we reciprocate favor. If someone is doing a favor, giving us a gift, we want to give it back. We want to reciprocate. So someone has given a gift to me on my birthday. I want to make sure that I also give a birthday gift. And we feel pressure to behave as other people are expecting from us. Right? The expectation are felt as obligation. And we also reciprocate animosity. So not only we want to reciprocate good thing, we want to reciprocate bad things also. So when we reciprocate favor, this tendency helps in group cooperation. Everyone is nice to each other, so niceness is being reciprocated among people in the group. And if you ask for help to someone, that asking for help, someone is asking help from me, that itself kind of triggers this reciprocation, and I start feeling pressure to help that person. And the worst effect of reciprocation is the reciprocation of animosity. So wars become brutal because animosity gets reciprocated. Next tendency is Kantian fairness. So normally we want to treat others well when we meet someone new, someone we have not met before. So normally we want to treat new people well by helping them and showing courtesy to them. And we also expect this from other people. Right? So when we are showing courtesy and that courtesy is being reciprocated, then it creates a good virtuous loop. But when our courtesy is not getting reciprocated, when we don't receive similar treatment from people, then we start reciprocating the same. Right? So you are going through the road and you smile to a new person who is crossing you. And if that person doesn't smile you back, then next time you encounter that person, you don't smile back. Right? So this kind of reciprocation, it kind of leads to disconnection. So the next one is mere association. So mere association is something which actually leads to jumping to conclusions based on past correlation, which are not causal relation. So you happen to see two things together, and next time you see them together, you think that somehow they are related. So mere association is jumping to conclusion based on past correlation, which are not causal relation, and choosing based on that. So most of the advertisement actually works on mere association. So you see Aishwarya Rai advertising for Coke, and next time you see Coke, your subconscious mind remembers Aishwarya Rai and you tend to buy Coke. Whereas there is no causal relation between Aishwarya Rai and Coke. The next tendency is contrast caused distortion. So contrast caused distortion has two parts. The first is that we notice only contrast and we miss out noticing minor incremental changes. And it can be very it can result in very damaging effect in our life. So the first example is where the life situation is such that because of contrast, we choose poorly. So the example which Charlie Munger gives is many desirable, beautiful women, they end up choosing, they end up saying yes to poor marriage proposals only because, in contrast to their own family, that proposal appears to be better. So they are living in a very dysfunctional family. Their own family situation is very bad, and that becomes a reference. And in contrast to that, only in contrast to that, the proposal appears better, and they end up saying yes to that proposal. Whereas in isolation, they deserved much better proposal, and they could have waited for that. So this is one example where your own life situation can make you choose something which is not in your best interest, whereas there are other situations where you can get manipulated by others using this contrast phenomena. So because we only notice contrast, what happens is once you decide to buy a car, let's say you are buying a new car, so you do all your due diligence, and then you say, okay, I am buying this car. And once you have decided that, okay, I'm buying this 12 lakhs or 15 lakh car, that becomes your anchor, because you have agreed to spend 12 lakhs or 15 lakhs. And then all the accessories of car will look lot more cheaper to you with reference to 12 lakh rupees, whereas the accessories in themselves would be very costly. So this is how many car dealers, they make more money on accessories and spare parts, and less money on the actual car sale. The second example is, let's say you go to a new city and you are looking for a house on rent. So you approach a real estate broker, and what that real estate broker will do is he will show you 2 3 houses first, which would be in very bad condition, lousy condition, bad location, and very expensive. They would appear very expensive. And then after that, he will show you a house which would be moderately better, and it would be slightly expensive. But in comparison to the first 2 3 choices which he showed you, this particular choice would appear better, and you will immediately start thinking that I should say yes to this particular choice. So here what is happening is, real estate broker is creating a reference and then creating a contrast in the choice which he actually wants to sell you. So this is how he is manipulating you. The third example is, every time we see an advertisement that 50% off on retail stores, on clothes, right? It starts affecting us because 50% creates a big, huge contrast, and we tend to, tend to feel like buying that stuff. Now the second part is, we don't notice the incremental changes, whether it's positive or negative. So because of that, what happens is, most people don't appreciate compound interest. The compound interest, which is said to be the eighth wonder of the world, most people don't understand it. They don't want to understand it, only because it works wonders in long term. So the change is gradual, incremental. When we start a good habit like going to gym or jogging, it feels like nothing is improving because the change is very incremental. We start questioning the formation of continuing this new behavior. Third is moral failure, you know, taking bribe, cheating, adultery. So you start with something bad in small quantity, and then it gradually keeps on increasing, and you don't notice that you have started falling into questionable moral behavior which otherwise probably you would have avoided. Gradually deteriorating health is also not noticed because you are looking at yourself every day. Only when you meet someone after 4 months, that person suddenly realizes that, oh yeah, this person is looking very sick. And incrementally increasing debt is also not realized. Incrementally increasing loss in trading is also kind of not noticed so strongly. Next tendency is over influence from authority. So, what happens is we feel powerless and we feel like someone has made a decision and we can't do anything about it. This is the feeling, this is the reaction which gets generated when we are dealing with authority. And this happens when some authority figure is giving some instruction, some task, some order. And this also happens when someone else is invoking the authority figure reference. So it happens both time. One, when you are getting direct instruction or order from the authority figure, or second, when someone else invokes the authority figure reference. For example, in our childhood, our sibling used to say that mom said so, you have to do it, right? This is the invoking of authority figure. So the downside is you will suffer if the leader is giving wrong instruction, pure wrong instruction, and you are not able to counter that. Or when leader is giving correct instruction, but somehow that instruction is not clear, or you have heard it incorrectly, or you have read it incorrectly. We will not have the courage to question it and clarify that. And there are many examples of that. Next example is social proof. Next tendency is social proof. So in social proof, it's an automatic tendency to think like others, to act like others, and if others are not acting, we also decide we will not act. Right? So basically, over influence of other people in our thinking and behavior. And this is especially true when there is stress and uncertainty. So when there is a stress and uncertainty, when we are not very clear about the situation or what we should do, at that time this tendency becomes even stronger. We start looking at what other people are doing. For example, in traffic light, especially in India, when not everyone is following the traffic, you are standing in a traffic light because there is a red signal, but then you see that so many other people are simply crossing it, and then you start feeling that I should also cross it, or I should wait here and wait for green light. The second example is, everyone thinks I want to become software engineer. Why? Because the everyone else is also saying I want to become a software engineer. So social proof is affecting our choice here. The next tendency is envy and jealousy, which we all are very familiar. So in envy and jealousy, what happens is we make poor choices to show off. It could be, for example, buying an expensive car which we don't need, or an expensive vacation, or it could also lead to us responding in a manner which is filled of hatred and animosity, right? And when we respond that way, it gets reciprocated by the other person, and it results in broken relationship and disorder within a group, and it is very powerful. So in this video we will cover only this much. Remaining tendencies we would be covering in the part 2 of this particular video. So thank you for watching this. Have a nice day.